Hi, everyone, and welcome back to The Things We Know. As of this listening, as of this recording, we're 5 months out, but by the time you hear this episode, it will have been just 6 months since the Palisades and the Eaton fires hit Los Angeles. And as many of you may know, I live in downtown Los Angeles. So while I was not directly affected, I didn't have to evacuate. There were no fires super close to where I was. I did watch that entire week unfold from my living room window. I could see the plumes of the smoke grow in the Palisades fire. I woke up to the smoke from the Eaton fire hanging over downtown LA, really making it look like the neighborhood had the apocalypse hit overnight.
Yeah. Oh God. And if you were only witnessing the fire from the media like me, you might think that the people who lost their homes were all Hollywood stars. I do know differently, but if you're watching it, if I didn't know people there, if I wasn't from that area, I wouldn't have known differently. So you may have heard the misinformation that LA ran out of water, the firefighters from other states like Oregon were held back from getting here because of environmental regulation. Two myths we debunked earlier this year in our episode about what are facts. There was even some really dark parts of the internet that said this is what California deserves.
And here's the thing, fire doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care how much money you make. It doesn't care where you live. So many people lost everything. And while that is obviously incredibly sad, and we're going to share some different ways that you can still help out, today really we wanted to come at this from a place of the resilience of Angelinos and the beautiful ways that the community stepped up and real people learned how truly resilient they were. And so, to that end, I am so happy to have back our friend Sherry Turner. Sherry was a guest on our first season with her episode Just a Page, and she is here to talk about not just what happened when she lost her house in the Palisades fire, but everything that's happened since then and how, again, it is just a page.
Sherry is an entrepreneur, a wife, married to her husband Glenn for 43 years, a mother to two amazing women, and grandma to three gorgeous grandchildren. Also, just this badass entrepreneur. I just want to re-emphasize that because you've done a bunch of cool things. Sherry, so happy to have you back.
Oh, thank you so much. I am so honored to be with you guys. I love the work that you're doing. I love the voice that you're giving to younger women and the encouragement that you give to all of us at any age and the knowledge that you provide. So I'm just humbled to be here with you guys. You do such an amazing job. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. So, one of the reasons I wanted you on here today is because I'm just gonna say it. This isn't new news. I've told you this before. You're an absolute inspiration to me. With the Palisades fire, this is not your first rodeo. You've had plenty of other challenges show up in your life, and yet each time you show up with such faith and grace and such a positive, loving outlook. Not that things have always been easy, but those qualities, it really seems to help you get through whatever life puts in your way. So, if you don't mind, let's start at the beginning. I'd love for you to just sort of give us, I don't know, a little story around what happened that first full week in January. And you and I talked. You said you have some journal pages you'd like to read from. I would love that.
Sure. Yeah, to go back and kind of think about that, I almost have to go back 3 weeks prior to
Mm,
that. And we had another fire, the Franklin fire in
right.
Malibu was on the 10th of December. And 3 days before that, I had a brain tumor that I have radiated. And then on the 10th was going in, I had just found out that I had breast cancer. And so went in to have the surgery on the 10th. Found out at 2:30 in the morning that we were under evacuation warnings. And so uh, got dressed. We were trying to sleep on top of the bed with our clothes on and went, well, this is silly. And power was out. So we went to the hospital to try and, get on and find out what was going on. We got in later that week. later that day after surgery, and went on our merry way into Christmas and recovery and all of that. And so on January 7th, I knew getting up that morning, the winds were starting to really blow, and we had had plenty of warning that this was coming. So I was busy getting some emails out at the last minute before I knew power was going to go down, and we didn't know for how long. And then we saw the smoke coming up behind the house, just on the mountain behind the house. And just like on the 10th, we knew we'd get right back in.
Hmm.
And the super scoopers were coming over and all of that was happening. And but the power never went out, which was also very interesting.
Hmm.
And so it was by 12:30 that afternoon that we knew we had to leave. And when I walked down to the end of our driveway with my husband, neighbors are down there and we can see the flames just at the end of the street and across the canyon. And it became very real. But yeah, so anyway, that's kind of how that day unfolded. And then Lisa, we went downtown. We evacuated
Hmm.
our daughters until we found out about an hour and a half later that her place was being threatened by the Eaton fire. So then we all went downtown and yeah, and it was just we were sitting at the top of the hotel watching what was happening and not knowing, and but feeling pretty hopeful that, this wasn't going to happen. The Getty Villa is right in our neighborhood. And so it's like, well, they won't let the Getty burn. And we've lived there 37 years. So, well,
And I didn't really realize how often fires happen in Malibu. So for you, this wasn't really new news. Like I remember the Franklin fire, but like it just never really, I did not know until after the fact that the Palisades gets a big fire almost every year. It just isn't like this.
well,
Wow. And
yeah.
usually addressed quickly.
Sorry.
It's usually addressed quickly. Is that why we don't know this?
Um, Not always, but
Mm,
yeah, I think, as anything, when it becomes a thing that happens all the time, you just, if there's the Woolsey fire, then the Franklin fire, then the this fire, then the that fire,
Yeah.
and Lahaina goes down, and, Paradise.
hmm
All these things happen, and it happens all over the world. And, there's always catastrophes going on. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
But I heard a statistic yesterday. My husband and I were on a webinar. That's been a real blessing to have these webinars with,
Mm.
all the entities and private individuals that are helping. And, I think it was in Malibu and the Palisades, every decade there are two big fires.
Hmm.
And that's held true. I remember when our younger was a freshman at Pepperdine, and they were all having to, shelter in place. A big fire came through, and that's when a lot of devastation happened. And, so we had one fire back in the 90s where the wall of flames was right at Topanga. And
Hmm.
we evacuated for 4 days, 5 days, and got back in. So we've seen it closer, we've seen it bigger. And, but I don't know, for some reason at that point, I think about 6 to 8 months before the fire, I kept not every time, that's an exaggeration, but when I would drive home or I'd get up in the morning or I'd look at our backyard or I'd go into the kitchen, I kept hearing, hold these material things lightly.
Hmm.
So somehow I felt prepared, but I'll read you. I just have a few journal entries, and this is like, I don't know, being very vulnerable, but I think it kind of tells the outer story or the inner story rather than the outer story.
Love it.
And friends had been saying, "Are you journaling?" And I was like, "I don't journal," but then I just did. Um, So on February 13th, 5 weeks and 2 days, it said 5 weeks, 2 days since we lost our home, fire. The most equalizing force. We are all equal in this disaster. We must support all those affected, housekeepers, storekeepers, gardeners, mail carriers. There are just so many. And then I wrote down Isaiah 41:10 that had been resonating with me. And it's beautiful. It's fear not, for I am with you. Be not afraid, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and uphold you with my mighty right hand.
Mm.
And that was, that's been with me the last number of years. And so giving me a lot of strength. And I said, today is the first day I've started to feel almost caught up with the onslaught of what we've been facing. There was so much stress and everything, that everybody was having to face with getting with insurance companies and trying to find a place to live and,
Yeah.
all of that going on at once and having nothing. Um, so then on the 8th of March, 2 months since the fire, I was just remembering God's promises. And on January 1st, I said, packing up the Christmas decorations, they felt more special, more sacred than they had before. And I remember thinking that was odd. Um,
Mm.
I was packing up Christmas ornaments. I talked to so many of the ornaments. I told them how special they were. I talked to the ornament I'd made when I was 8 years old in Campfire Girls. It was red and shiny ball um, with Sherry 64 in silver glitter. I said to it, I loved seeing you again this year, being with you. You've always been so special to me. And then I lovingly wrapped it in tissue and put it away. And then I said, John, 1 John 2:17, and the world is passing away along with its desires, but whoever does the will of God abides forever. And then from Matthew 24:35, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. So, and then still on March 8th, bad dreams, nightmares began to subside once we met with our architects to look at interior um, plans of the new house. And until then, the nightmares came every night. And then I said, last night I had another one after 2 or 3 weeks of not having any. Glenn and I had people helping us look for new wooden salt box, a salt shaker with, sea salt in it, in the rubble and ashes of our apartment building that had just burned down. And then that morning I looked up and I saw biblically that salt is a powerful symbol of preservation and covenant and influence, and is used in offerings as a preservative and to symbolize the role of believers in the positive force of the world. So I thought that was interesting that it was all about.
Yeah.
And then on March 9th, I just wrote generosity, love, and encouragement. And on March 10th, another nightmare last night, I drove out a big plate glass window in a huge high rise in my car. I was
Mm.
trying to save Sophia, our granddaughter, our oldest granddaughter, but I don't know from what. As I sailed through the window, the car floated down gently, many stories, landed without incident. I don't know if I ever saved Sophia. And then on March 24th, went up to our lot yesterday. Glenn diligently cleans the debris out of the pool. He is so faithful in his commission to keep it clean. We saw neighbors again today. Mr. H had a heart attack in December, feels very frail. Their insurance isn't being of much help during the remediation. Glenn called the commissioner's office today to see what can be done. I stood in the lot and just looked out. Some days are just harder. And then on the 25th of March, God's provisions are so gracious. In 2022, during a networking meeting, a lawyer who we network with offered to review anybody's existing will or trust, and I took her up on it. The blessing. Our hard copy had been destroyed in the fire, and the previous attorney had lost it when her server went down years ago, but never told us until the other day. Glenn had copied the entire doc so that I could scan it to the attorney back in 2022. Thank God it was there. This saved us from having to go back through the courts to find it.
Wow.
Wow.
In 2021, God had laid on my heart to start a commitment to read. So in 2021, I read 46 books. In 2022, 57, 2023, and 2024, 55 each year. And the books just flowed. I love historical fiction, read a lot about World War II. The entire time I kept feeling like I was being prepared for something. The thought of refining fire would enter my thoughts often. I found myself molding to the idea that life as I knew it would be changing. It scared me, but not in a personally fearful way. I just felt like I was being prepared for the tough stuff of life. And my thoughts centered around war. Was this what was coming for us? Then I said, I've learned to live with much less. Happiness is where you find it, and it can take work at times, and joy is always there. And then on March 29th, John 16:33 always resonated in my heart for years to give me strength and encouragement now. And that verse is, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world. And then on
Mhm.
March 31st, I just kept saying the surrender prayer all day, which was, oh, Jesus, I surrender myself to you, take care of everything. And then on April 1st, I said, feeling particularly bruised and exhausted these days and a bit weepy. So very and eternally grateful for the generous outpouring of LA to all of us who have lost our homes. And then on April 3rd, I believe, help my unbelief. And
Mm.
that's it.
I
Mm.
remember you and I having conversations and about you saying, something big's coming. My world's
Mm.
changing and I don't know how. Do you remember we had those
I
conversations?
do. I do. Oh my
That's big
Wow.
for someone who's been through already big things. You would think you would just feel like pieces ahead. You're intuitive.
And
Yeah.
another generous blessing was that we were here in Santa Monica, so I could make it to these early radiation mornings. We were just
Mm.
blocks from the hospital.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Mm.
So
Wow.
anyway,
Thank you for sharing all of that. As you were I know the reason you mentioned this to me is you called yesterday and you said I just came across these. I didn't, and I was reading them and I thought it might be, as you said, a good inner game versus here's the specifics of how we're, what we're doing. What did you think when you reread that stuff?
I started crying.
Yeah, it was a little.
Um,
I was getting a little teary.
just a little crying. I haven't been able to cry yet. When we went up to the house the first day, the first time and saw it for the first time, I thought I'd had a good hard cry. And I said to my husband later, I'm so sorry I went on in the car for so long. And he looked at me, grabbed me by the shoulders. He goes, that was nothing. It's gonna
Mm,
need to come. So anyway, I felt like I have in the past, like there's work to be done. I don't have time yet. And when I read the journal on Tuesday, um, I uh I could feel the tears coming up, but I keep when they get to about here, I
hmm.
push them way back down again because there's too much to get done um
Mm.
to take time to think about it yet. For me personally, and I'm not saying at all that that's healthy. It's just what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Well, to me, it sounds like you're doing both really well and gracefully. Lisa and I talk a lot, in fact, at our retreat about how grief, has its own schedule
Mhm.
and it's going to show up. And if you don't allow it, it's going to kind of burn away at you. And you also have to get stuff done. So it
Yeah.
sounds like you're you're doing some moving forward without pretending everything's fine, right? Like you're moving forward. You seem really grounded in prayer and self-care. And it also sounds like grief shows up and you're like, well, I guess I better let you come in.
Yeah, every once in a while. My husband is incredibly resilient. And I mean, since day one, people would go, I literally since day one, how are you doing? Couldn't be better. And he's just, he just like puts that on and goes for it. And a few weeks into it, I had to say to him, you know what, honey? I'm standing right behind you or right next to you as you're saying this, but that's not my story and I can't authentically agree with you. So maybe just say, I couldn't be better. Because
Mm,
I could be better. I could be a lot better. I just don't want to talk about it right now and I want to just keep going. And and yeah, we all deal with it so differently, even within, our couples, right? We just
yeah.
things so differently. So, yeah, but the things that have happened, and Lisa, you and I have talked about this. I mean, I love our community so much. My daughters and I were talking about this, I think, and you and I were talking about it the other day. The perception
Yep.
is that we're all individuals and we just march to our own drummers, and it is just, yeah, there's that too. But
Yeah.
the community and the outpouring and the just the deep sense of being cared for when you are at your most vulnerable. Um, I remember when we moved in here and got a potato peeler, and it was like, we have something for the kitchen. I mean, there wasn't any
Mhm.
furniture, there wasn't anything. And that potato peeler meant the world. And I think that we can get isolated, at least I can. I won't speak for anybody else other than myself, but get isolated in our own worlds and I protect myself from what's going on around me at times because I can't take on too much, other than what I have to deal with at the moment. And a lot of it is emotional, but the empathy that I think this is teaching me to allow myself to feel when I see others around the world in pain. There was always
Mm.
empathy there, but it was protected. I was putting a shield up. And now I've seen it break down a lot more. And it's like, because it's been done onto me, I want to do it onto others more.
Mm.
And I just love our community, our huge, beautiful community.
Diverse
Um,
community. Yeah.
Diverse.
I I love that you brought this up because I feel like LA, and being from Southern California, I can connect to this. And I didn't live in LA, but not far. Just this whole idea of being self-involved or
Hmm.
disconnected. And people even from LA were laughing at themselves how during these like horrific moments on the news, people were like, getting their moment on TV. And I feel like you witnessed something really different. I think we all did if we were paying attention. And so I'm just curious, like what are some examples of some of these kindnesses or in connections that surprised you the most in all of that aftermath?
Yeah. Um, we were in our house for 37 years, raised our girls there. Um, and it felt like so many of their friends, when you've got young kids and you get to be the house where people go a lot of the times, especially we would have for whoever was had out of town during college, they came to our house for Thanksgiving and Easter. And and parties, oh my gosh, we had such great parties in the backyard, if I do say so myself. I mean, they were really fun. And it wasn't because of anything that we did, but it's because of our daughters, who they are. And their friends, their friends. Our younger daughter, I mean, a friend of hers is, they just loved on us. Because of different professions that they're in, we're able to support us in really powerful ways, helping us to get back on our feet faster. And um, that was unbelievable. And local brands. And, you know, I remember being, so we were in church that first Sunday, after the fire. So Tuesday and then Sunday. And we were here in Santa Monica at St. Monica's at the church we were married at, and would be celebrating 43 years of marriage in just a couple of weeks. And we're sitting there, and they're talking about, for the people affected from the fire, we've got gift cards, we have toiletries, we have, this, and it's all in this room. Just go there. And I turned to my husband and I said, they need gift cards, honey. We got it. And then it dawned on me, and I went, oh my gosh, we're those people. We're the ones that need
Mm.
help. And it was really powerful to go in. And I remember I saw a Venus razor. I'm like, it's a Venus. And she goes, take it. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm going, do you have any dental floss by any chance? And we were given toothpaste, and we walked across the park to our hotel and went upstairs. And my husband and I looked at those objects like they were gold.
Mm.
It was, it was lovely. It was an awfully lovely moment to be in those shoes, to identify in those shoes and feel a little bit of what that must feel like to lots of people
Mhm.
all the time. And it made me feel really, I don't know,
Mhm.
silly to say, but grateful for the experience.
Yeah. And I think again, if you weren't local to LA, you probably didn't see those kinds of stories on the news. And
Mhm.
yet there were so many. I know, so the Palisades fire starts and it gets a ton of attention at the beginning. And then the Altadena fire, which was literally on the other side of LA. It was just such a crazy weather time. And I remember them focusing a lot on, for a couple of days, on the Altadena fire. And the story after story was a very similar story to what you're saying. People weren't thinking about themselves. They were thinking about going to their neighbor's house. And I saw this in Palisades too, right? Going and putting water on their neighbor's house to hope that it would even, and their house was gone.
Right.
Like there was two or three different stories where I'd see these men who were out there with fire hoses in Altadena, and their house was gone, but they were still in the neighborhood working on other houses. And again, it's just we didn't see that kind of stuff in the mainstream media. We were just hearing the crummy stuff that wasn't even true. So these stories, just that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this, was to talk about these kinds of, because, and I'm hoping the listeners take away, like, when you are challenged with something, look to your community.
That's so true, Lisa. It's as you're saying that the thought that came to mind that has been in my mind is, when one of us is hurting, we're all hurting.
Yep.
Mm.
There was one man, and in those days, you just walked down the street and you knew you identified by the eyes, you saw
Mm,
who was in what spot. And there was one person talking about how he just kind of felt guilty. He had sold his house in one area that burned down, and I remember saying to him, you know what? We are all in the same boat. No story sucks more than another's. We're all in the same boat. And some of us can be at the oars right now, while the others of us sit listlessly in the back and stare out, and we'll
yep.
just keep taking turns. And that's what it's felt like to be here for me.
Yeah.
When you can, you take the oars for somebody else. And when you can't, somebody's got it for you.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
I will say, in looking forward, one thing that, and I remember the day it happened, and I said to my husband, it feels so good because of the support that we have received, um, not to feel like a refugee anymore, but to feel like a rebuilder.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just coming from that place of just feeling like, okay, feet are getting under us. We're moving forward. There's joy in every moment. We can find it. We have been. And yeah, it was very nice to be able to walk to that side of it.
Yeah, to have that
Mm.
shift.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah.
What is it like now? Like, what does it feel like, look like, like what's the physical reality right now?
Um, well, more lots are getting cleared. Very encouraging to see. When I first went up there and saw our lot cleared, I thought it would be so nice not to see, you know, the things that were there that had been standing up, just weeks before. And it was odd because the first thought that came to my mind was it almost looked like we've been erased. Like
Mm.
7 years of those memories, of those joys, of those sweet times, of all that love that was in that space is gone. And now it definitely, it just, it's odd, it's eerie. But there is such hope. I mean, we had hired our gardener to come over and take away all the dead, trees and dead stuff. I'm telling you what, we have one banana tree that it started blossoming in February, and there's a bunch coming out. And
Wow.
agapanthus are popping up on the hill, and they're getting ready to bloom because it's their time
Wow.
of year. And
Yes.
all of our giant birds of paradise, they were all chopped down, and there's like all these sprigs coming up, all these pups all over the place. So yeah, and when you drive by a neighbor's house that had dear friends of ours had beautiful roses in their front yard, those roses are all blooming. And the
Wow.
house is
Mm,
gone, but the roses are there. It's just like you can't stop hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
wow.
So along those same lines, again, when we brought you on season one with just a page, it was
Mhm.
talking about how everything that happens as it should. You and I've had this conversation. It's where Kari and I both sit. I think you sit there too. Like everything happens exactly as it should, even the crummy things.
Mhm.
And while neither one of us, because we've had conversations where you've been like, this has been a rough day emotionally. And so this is not like, oh,
Mhm.
toxic positivity or everything's always coming up unicorns and rainbows.
No.
But I do think your faith, and again, it's been so inspiring to me. I'm
Totally.
self-identified as a recovering Catholic. You are a very strong in your faith, your Catholicism. I mean, it seems like such a simple question, but what is it about having had that strength pre the fires that gets you through even those tough days?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think um, you know, um, and not to get too into this, but I know God's word is true. And being able to settle into scripture, understand a little bit, read, through whatever, so, there are plenty of sources out there, to help guide and all of that. But ever since I was little, um, you know, I can remember going through a tornado and the
Mm,
next day I was going to be making my first communion. And I
wow.
Mm,
remember just praying in the basement and going, please, Lord, let me make that first communion. And if truth be told, it was because
mhm.
I really wanted to wear that veil. But,
Totally.
you know, it was, I just feel like, when, if we can open up and listen, he's telling us things. And that, I love that. It's like, don't be afraid, I'm with you.
Mm,
And
Mm,
you know, things that look difficult, they are. And there's that one scripture that I think is always used is, God doesn't give you anything more than you can handle.
yeah.
Well, he does. He gives us more than we can handle all the time.
mhm,
To
But
grow.
when I rely on him
Yeah.
to do it for me and put me in the right space, give me the right attitude to go forward, nothing is impossible. I mean, nothing is impossible. And so, and that's not to say it's not broken and ugly and horrible and sucky and man, I wish this wasn't the desert I was having to walk through right now, but you can't go around them
Right.
and you just have to go through them. And so, yeah, I don't know.
mm,
I think that's it. But I just feel like there's such graciousness in preparation, and there's
Mm,
such beauty in getting to the other side and being able to look in the rearview mirror and see those mileposts that he's put up for you all along when you go, why did that happen? Or what was that all about? Or why did that do? Whatever, why did my child have to go through this? And even that really ugly stuff that we all had to go through, it came out to be, beauty from ashes.
yeah.
So
mm.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can
It
sit
really,
in
go
ashes
ahead. Sorry.
and, you know,
Yeah.
there's a choice. We all have
Yeah.
a choice.
You sound so committed to a beautiful life of, of faith and gratitude that you're not saying I'm bypassing it. I'm acknowledging it and it sucks some days, but still above those clouds is a lot of blue sky, right? So
Hmm.
I think that that's a beautiful reminder that no matter how hard things are, you have that grounding base of faith and that you're not alone. I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's lovely. And yeah, something I'm very grateful for, but I also hope that everybody experiences.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Again, you and I have had this conversation privately, but there's something so calming for me when I talk to you and you quote scripture. And it's interesting because anybody that knows me would be like, really, that doesn't sound like you. But I think the reality of it is, and this is a whole nother pod, so we won't do this, but like for me, like, so you and I actually relate to you on so many levels from a faith perspective. I struggle with organized religion, but I don't struggle with the scripture. Like the stuff you bring to me, I'm like, it just always, I feel myself when we talk, just go, so for me, you're such a lovely reminder of I get to show up however I want to show up with this knowledge that I grew up with. That is very calming. And I mean, we happen to be recording. I just want to shout it out. We happen to be recording right after the new American Pope. Apparently, it is Pope Leo the 14th. So that's exciting, is his name. Sorry, Google keeps sending me links while we're in this Zoom, so that's how I know it so fast. And I just really we've talked about this with Francis, that Pope Francis was such a guiding light for someone like me who doesn't go to church on a regular basis but could still feel connected. And I've always felt that with you. And I know, Kari, you've got that kind of impact in your life as well, which is really lovely.
Well, yeah, I have a lot of, my brother-in-law is a Jesuit like Pope Francis, and
Mhm.
um, big Catholic family, both my husband and I on both sides of each of our families. So yeah, we were like late to record because it was lots of
We're like,
excitement.
who's the Pope?
What's
Who's the
happening?
Pope?
White smoke, white smoke.
There were three Catholic girls on waiting for to see what the new Pope, who the new Pope is.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
so grateful to be together for that.
I
That was
know, that was
I
fun.
actually think it might be interesting to watch how this unfolds and have you again. You could just be a serious guest, but I would love to chew on the idea of what it means to be a liberal Catholic, and the different grades of that, because so many people put the words conservative with Catholic, and that makes sense. But because people don't understand the difference between being somebody who's conservative in your lifestyle versus conservative politically, I just think it's really interesting that the words Catholic or Christian, and hearing all about Christian nationalism right now. It's such an interesting topic, and then to be with someone who's so grounded in just faith and humanity like you, I just think it's a great conversation for people to have and get more comfortable and less triggered
Yeah.
around.
less
Yeah.
triggering. Yeah, yeah, that's
Mm.
beautifully said.
Um, any other shout? I mean, obviously we want to shout out the firefighters that
Oh,
Mhm.
just, oh my
oh,
gosh.
oh,
There's no words. And they were even getting like some hate because it was like, oh, they weren't getting there fast enough. I mean, I want to acknowledge again, for those of you who may not remember, that week in January was an unusual, we had not had rain for a very long time. The Santa Ana winds, which is something we get every year, but they were 100 miles per hour. You mentioned the super scoopers at the beginning. They actually could not fly
right.
because of the wind. So unfortunately, some of the loss came from, for the first like 24, 36 hours, the things that LA employs could not actually happen. The things that actually make the third night, so it started Tuesday, Wednesday, so I think it must have been Wednesday night or Thursday. There was a fire. It was called the Sunset Fire, and the winds
Hmm.
had died. And that one, we literally could see out our front window. We watched
Hmm.
it start. We watched it happen. We watched it go out. We just happened to be straight across from it. It was nowhere near us, but we could watch it. And by then, the winds had died down. So the super scoopers came in, and man, just whew, one fell swoop, and that fire was out. And so there was there were all this misinformation about the firefighters and their budget and all of this. And when it just comes right down to it, they worked for days on end without sleep. We brought firefighters in from Canada, from Oregon, all over the place. So that's a big shout out.
Yeah.
So along with that, I would just when we drive up to our lot every day or every couple times a week, the everyone who is there protecting the roadway, protecting Pacific Coast Highway,
Mm-hmm.
working along the highway. I mean, I feel like the queen sometimes because I'm just waving. I'm just like, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
And they are working so hard at and I meant I only feel like a queen because of the wave. There's
Right.
nothing else about that. Um, but watching the lots, all of a sudden there we had one property on PCH. It would look like the stairwell to nowhere, and it
Mm,
was so heartbreaking to see. And then one day it was gone. And that was because of all of the hard work that goes on. I was during the night. I was
yeah.
driving back from Malibu one evening back to Santa Monica, and at different checkpoints being stopped because of all the work going on, and while you were sleeping.
Yeah.
And so, yes, oh my goodness, it was incredible. And the heartbreak to those firefighters who I know were on a street in our neighborhood, and we saw a bit of a recording from one of them, and they were just heartbroken.
Right.
There was so much pressure being used everywhere else. There was no water coming out of the fire hydrants. And it was just
Yeah.
like, you know, physically, there's only so much you can do. This was a once in a three generation fire.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. Mm.
Yeah, there were some, local businesses here. I'd love if you wanted to give a few shout outs to the local businesses that have been helping people. And
Oh,
then we could talk about some of the bigger links that people
oh,
can go to.
oh my goodness. Um, our daughter told us about a place in Venice called Our Place. And she got us I don't know, a little thing with the manager on a Friday. My husband and I went in, a little shopping thing, and saw this one skillet we both really wanted, but it was pretty expensive. And I mean, I think it was over $200, maybe $220. And they said, 30% off. And we're like, oh, okay, well, could we get this one? And she goes, you know what? Come in tomorrow. That's our giveaway. You guys, in the rain, there was a drizzle. There was a line of us. I was probably 150th. My husband dropped me off, parked like miles away, hoofed it back in. Just as I was getting in the store, they were giving us huge bags with this gorgeous, expensive skillet with pasta sauce, with pasta, with, just things for us. So, when we had the opportunity and needed more pots and pans, you better know where we went.
Right.
Right back there. And then Macy's is continuing to still give those of us affected by the fire 30% off, I think, through well, I should say
Wow.
30 to 30 through June. And their response is, no, we're supporting our community because, months out, you're going to need different things than you needed at the beginning. And where you land, you're going to maybe have more space, or maybe we don't, but maybe you'll have more space to take more things. Um, and Lululemon was come in and pick out $200 worth of stuff. You guys, I got home and my bag had one item more than the $200, like a pair of, leggings.
Yeah.
And I was distraught. I called the store manager. I'm like, I am so sorry, but this ended in here. I just wanted you to know I'm bringing them back. He goes, please just keep them.
Mm. That's
I
nice.
just thought maybe, I was keeping somebody else from having another pair of lines. So I was like, but and then at our local hotel, we were at the again, because of one of my younger daughter's friends who happened to get us in there early on so that we could, we didn't even I just couldn't even think of where to go or who to call or where to be. We went to the Proper in Santa Monica. And I mean, the manager there was so lovely.
That's
When
so
we moved
nice.
out 3.5 weeks later, um, gave us a parting beautiful gift. Just and discounts. And then he'd have things on the rooftop. We had 2 nights of just come up and have drinks and hors d'oeuvres. And, other at that point, refugees were all standing up there going, what's your story? And just commiserating together. I know Vori was doing things. Um, and if I go in someplace and, oh, Cezanne is this beautiful little boutique in Brentwood, and they're an online store. But I happen to say, oh, I used to have this sweater. I'd really like to have it.
Mm.
And, well, what happened? And I told them, they go, oh, we're giving you people 20% off. And still, I just got something else there the other day for 20% off. So the support of, there's every once in a while just getting one of those things you had. I mean,
Yeah.
beautiful outpouring of, donated clothing has been incredible, just absolutely incredible. And every once in a while, you just want something that you had and
Yeah.
to be able to get it back and people to understand. So I know I'm forgetting so many. There was,
I know there's so much happening for pets too, and people with
oh,
pets.
Yep.
That just been unbelievable and so
oh,
endearing.
and taking our dog. I mean,
Mhm.
there were all of us, I think downtown at the Bonaventure, there were like 10,000 people with their dogs. We're all like, but yeah, so many people. I was eating locally at a place like the second and third week on Montana, the Courtyard Cafe. And just I'm getting the bill and my husband and I are like, what's going on? And it's being discounted like 60 or 70%. One of the waiters said, I can't even charge you. And I said, you have to. We all have to survive. That won't do us any good if you're not here. So that's the kind of outpouring, the kind of love, and the kind of support.
Yeah, it's really been heartening to see. I grew up in the Midwest. I lived in Chicago. LA is probably our forever home at this point. And I don't find it to be, in fact, it's one of the reasons we ended up moving out here. I had the same um judgment about LA before I moved out here or before I came out here for the first time in 2016. And I pretty much figured out within a couple hours of being here that LA is not the city everybody tells you it is. It's actually very lovely and very community oriented. And I mean, every city has its people, but this LA has always just been lovely and warm and welcoming. So I'm not surprised that you had that experience, but I'm so happy that you did. And I want to give a couple of shout outs. And these links will be in the show notes. You can still donate to the Red Cross. If it doesn't go to LA, it will go somewhere. Red Cross is always stepping up. World Kitchen is another great place to donate to. If last I looked, and I don't know how accurate these are, but if you do actually go on to lacity.gov/LA Strong, there is a bunch of links there for organizations that are still helping people affected by the fire. And then lastly, I'm going to give out a shout out to another woman who lost her home in the Palisades fire named Rose Metcalf. She had me on a 4-day fundraiser for the fires back a couple of months ago. And so when we were doing this pod, I reached out and said, hey, is your fundraiser still available? And she said it is. So the link is up top. It is the Quantum Queen Activation Bundle. And if you donate at least $97, all of the money goes to actual people, humans, not organizations. She has created a nonprofit that will actually hand money out to people who need it, who are maybe struggling with getting the money from their insurance and so forth. And for $97, you actually get this huge bundle of gifts from all the speakers that were on the Quantum Queens panel. And last I heard, it was about $30,000 worth of gifts. So for $97, it's all going to go to actual humans that were affected by the fire, and you get all these gifts, including something in there from me as well. So all those links will be in the show notes. Hmm.
Sherry, thank you so much for being here. This is really, really helpful. I was heartbroken to hear that you were so affected. Lisa's been keeping me updated. You're always inspiring. And I'm curious, because you know the deal with us. Did you bring a song again, or a song that you picked for today at least that that's means a lot to you, and why?
Yeah. The one song that has stuck with me, and um, I was given it, I guess, I would say, when I went through bacterial blood infection in 2004. And the ER doc, they were doing a spinal probe and trying to figure out what I had going on. And I was holding my husband's hand, and the ER doc said, "Do you know that you're singing?" And I was like, "What? I just don't know I'm doing anything right now." And I was evidently I was singing the song "How Can I Keep from Singing?" And
Mm.
it's a hymn that we have sung in church, but yeah,
Mm.
just so beautiful. It's how can it's yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. It's really holding on to the rock. This storm won't shake my inmost calm. Unto this rock I'm clinging. My God is Lord of heaven and earth. How can I keep from singing?
Oh,
And so anyway, that's my song.
that is a perfect song for you. You had texted that to me. You're like, this has got to be my song. It's just running through my head, and it's
Yeah.
beautiful. I'm going to add one as well because, as I said, while I was not directly affected, anyone who lived in LA, we were affected, because almost everyone knows someone that lost something or got evacuated or watched it happen. I mean, it was the most unreal week of my entire life as it stands right now. And uh, of course, being your friend absolutely has been such a blessing during this time and having these conversations with you. But anyways, I want to add time spent in Los Angeles. The band is called Dawes, and this song originally came out in 2011. As it turns out, Dawes, the band, is from Altadena, where the Eaton fire happened, and again, another beautiful part of LA that was destroyed. So they put out a new version in April of this year and included Andrew Bird on violin and bassist Alan Hampton. And as much as the song was amazing beforehand, with the added violin from Andrew Bird, it's heartbreaking. And of course, it's taken on a new meaning. And this is my favorite line. You've got that special kind of sadness. You have that tragic set of charms that only comes from time spent in Los Angeles. Makes me want to wrap you in my arms.
Oh,
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 I
that's
know, it's
beautiful.
beautiful.
such a good song. Mm.
That's
Mm.
beautiful.
Sherry, as Lisa already said, you were on season 1 with just a page, and now another page chapter even has transpired. It's amazing how many lives you live in your young life. Is there anything else you would like to say to our listeners who tuned in to hear about this and who may be going through their own challenges?
Again, I think it's just remembering it's just a page, and the entire story has yet to be written. And I just, I guess my hope is that we all just write every page with a bit of joy in it and understand and see the bit of joy in the crummy and broken parts. Yeah, I think that's it because it is just a page. Honestly, some days where you just don't want to turn and see what the next page is going to be. But you know what? It is just a page and they're all good. You put them together and they make a beautiful story.
Mm.
Beautiful.
Love it. Well, thank you again for being on. And yes, I do feel like this is still probably not your last time. Maybe we get you on once every season.
Yeah.
You are gluttons for punishment.
No, I love having you on. So if this episode has touched your heart, please share it. And think about donating to one of the links up top, just because it's been 6 months and we've fallen off the radar of everything else going on in the world. This is far from over for the people of Los Angeles.
Mm. Yes. Until next time, thank you for listening.
Thanks, everyone.